Hi, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Nate Matthews, and I am here to give a little intro to my alternative and historic photography class offered this summer. It's Art 364, and it is offered Tuesdays and Thursdays in the first half of summer, which is May 25th through July 1st. And basically, alternative photography is anything non-digital. So I think of traditional or the most common photography classes these days are all digital capture, screen editing, digital printing if it has a printing component. And this class is going to cover basically anything that is non-digital. Don't get me wrong, there's some digital components to it, but non sort of contemporary norm. So that can be I'm trying to say analog processes. That could be historic processes like early in the development of photography, and then more contemporary processes that kind of are outside of the digital norm, as well as technology-based processes. Here's just a small list of things that we typically cover in this class, and I've got some images of what those might look like. A note about the class: it is a hybrid designated class. Hybrid designation means that there is some sort of a on-campus component. And this class will have some processes that can be done at home, some processes that will kind of require a darkroom or require supervision because they may be a little bit more messy or toxic. But it's possible to do the class as a mostly remote. I plan to do critiques in a remote format. But for most students, the class will actually look like something in the form of most classes being an A-B split, meaning the class is scheduled 10 till 4:45, but what that might look like is more like a 3-hour group meeting for half the class in the morning, 10 till 12:30 or 1, and then something like 1 or 1:30 until 4:30 in the afternoon for the second group. Like I said, the critiques will probably be mostly remote, and there'll be some flexibility in that, in whether you need to be on campus all the time, or for many of these processes, I can make a kit and send you home if you have some COVID, safety concerns. The class is an ELE-X, meaning it is getting you ELE credit, and it's cross-disciplinary because it is taking some art and photography and some history photography, as well as having a significant technology-based component to it. So that gets you ELE-X credit. And I want to note that the prereq in the system is listed for some reason as photography 2. And when the class was designated in ELE, it was supposed to be converted to be any studio art class, not even restricted to any photography class. If you've taken any 100, 200 level art class, you're eligible to take this class. So if you're not able to actually register, just shoot me an email. My email is there at the bottom of the screen, and I'll get you the authorization to register so that you can actually get in and do that. And I'm just going to take a couple minutes to go through some of the most common processes. We may have a little bit more that we dive into, but these are the ones that we typically do in the class, and we rotate some out here and there. So this first grouping is photograms, which is putting objects on top of a light sensitive piece of paper underneath a projector, or an enlarger, I should say, and shooting light down onto it. And so whatever the light completely hits will turn dark or turn black, and wherever the objects are will be white. So it's kind of like an X-ray, except using light. I should note that for some of these, students have actually laser cut and done other technology-based processes to make some of their objects, but the traditional way of doing it is to take an actual physical object like a feather or some other materials that are somewhat transparent or translucent, and shine light through those and create an interesting design with those things. The next process that's kind of related to the early history of photography is camera obscura. So you're essentially turning a room into a camera. and you cover up all the windows with black sheets of plastic. You cut a quarter size hole into one of them to be your aperture, letting light in, and the image gets projected upside down inside the room. So it's an interesting way of being able to do something at home, although we have done this in the past in some rooms, and particularly the department chair's office here on campus. But because of COVID, this is one of the processes that are really best done at home. Tintypes. Tintypes are probably the process that is the messiest and requires the most supervision. So tintype is basically a sheet of metal, trophy metal, that's painted black is what we typically use. You coat it with a solution of collodion that will make the silver stick to it and activate the silver to be light sensitive. You put that in the camera, you take your picture, and then you process it. And it gives you this one of a kind sheet of metal with an image on it, the really kind of precious objects, which is very unique for photography. So this is from a previous class, and you'll note that some of these had some chemistry issues and or dust problems from students kind of rushing the process. So it kind of is a fun quality that it gives you this really beautiful high resolution image, but the sort of imperfections are one of the things that I actually appreciate about the process. Anthotype is a process where you take pigment from plants, typically, whether that be flowers or berries or something of the sort, and you kind of squish it up and make a watery solution that will evaporate the water out of it rather quickly. And you coat it on a sheet of paper, typically watercolor paper, and you make either contact print of an object, or you can contact print a negative, and it will give you this kind of beautiful, different color, pink, purple, green image. Note this one has like a lot of pigment. I guess I should say it's like a berry that has a lot of pulp in it, perhaps. So it gives you a little bit more uneven texture. But these can create really beautiful monochromatic images. Colorful printing is probably my favorite process. And this is actually printing an image on a leaf. So you can print out an image on a transparency and sandwich that on top of a leaf. You have to pick out the right plant, the right leaf, particularly in order for the process to work well. But you essentially bleach out, much like the previous process, whatever is exposed to the sunlight for a long period of time will bleach out and give you highlights, and whatever is not will give you the darker, the shadow areas. And after this, the most common, if anyone's ever done alternate process, this is probably the one that you've done before, which is cyanotype. And this is a solution, it's a store-bought type of thing, so you get a little bit more control out of it. But it's a solution that you coat on the paper. It's initially yellow, but you expose it to the light, and when you process it, gives you this deep cyan blue image. We've actually experimented with tea or coffee staining, so you can get these warmer tones in the highlights through that. And it's a process that you can do outside, basically in a contact printing frame, or even any type of frame that'll give pressure will work, and you can kind of do it out in your backyard. Or what we have on campus is a UV exposure unit that allows you a little bit more precision, so you can get the right amount of contrast, the right amount of brightness very easily. Lumen printing is another really easy process that you can do just about anywhere. It typically would be done as a contact print of flowers or something like that. Plant life is really great because the moisture in it, such as in this image, gives you a large variety of tones going from the pinkish, greenish, bluish, yellowish, but more typically you get sort of an orange to pink purple look in them. And this is just taking darker print or darker paper and exposing it to sun, and it'll go, the range you get is orange to purple, pinkish, depending on how much exposure to light it gets. And then that's it. It's a process where if you fix it, the colors become much less vibrant. They turn kind of grayish. So typically you would just put it in a light proof box, or sandwich it in a book and it will eventually, fade and change over time. But it has a very beautiful quality to it if you don't fix it. Another process that we often experiment with is more of a drawing-based process, cliche vert, where you would typically take a sheet of glass and cover it with soot from a candle. Problem we've had in the past is that if you hold the candle in one place too long, the glass tends to shatter. So we use it's like a chalk pen or chalk marker, and you can coat a sheet of glass with it without having to use a flame. And then the whole idea is you draw into the soot or into the chalk, and it gives you an image that you can then contact print onto traditional darkened paper in order to have a final image. We also play with a little bit of collage images. So these are some examples of kind of layering multiple images together. And students have done this both with hand cutting with an X-Acto knife or using the laser cutter in order to cut patterns into their images. So that's a fun, more technology-based thing. Along technology-based processes, we also go into infrared photography, which works really great for landscapes and portraits. You'll see in portraits, it tends to do interesting things with the eyes turning black and the skin tones kind of washing out and becoming almost porcelain-like. And with landscapes, it tends to give you these really surreal images where they can either be purple and red, or if you try to color correct them, you can get the greens, or I should say, you can get this green or even odd blue colors in the materials that reflect infrared light, which typically anything with chlorophyll in it will reflect back and be brighter. And often skies will go deep black, depending on how you're catching the light. So we have one converted camera that shoots full spectrum that you can, that's what most of these images are off of, as well as two older cameras that don't have a infrared blocking filter in them. And then you can put a infrared a filter on it that then blocks visible light and only lets infrared light through and gets similar effects. Another technology-based process is scanographs, which are, it's really fun and easy and can give you some really interesting things. And usually the effect is that it's a very even light and that the focus falls off really quickly. So even anything that's a half an inch or even an inch off the sheet of glass will give you this out of focus look. So portraits are really fun for the larger scanner that we have, but playing with different things that let light through or have depth to them are another way to kind of have fun with that. 3D printed photographs are something that really we've experimented with the last couple of years. So 3D printed lithophane is basically how do I say it the right way? It's a two-dimensional, well, it's a print that has more dimension in the shadow areas or the darker areas to block up and let less light through. And then in the highlight areas, it is thinner and it lets more light through. And the idea is that you can just hold it up to a window or any light source and you'll see the image much like this. So here are some images that students have made in the past. And this is how we typically would critique them against the window. And then here's some shots on the light table so you can kind of see the quality and the line detail that comes through. And then the last sort of grouping is laser cut or etched images. And this would also incorporate, we have vinyl cutters in addition to the laser cutter. So the laser cutter can etch onto things. So etching on a glass is something that we typically experiment with. And then we also can turn things into a halftone. And these can be then cut. You have to kind of like back away and squint to see this portrait. But they could either be cut in vinyl or cut into paper. And then we also etch onto other materials. So like wood is typically a really, really beautiful and successful material to work with. I've had students etch into things like tile and kind of finding anything they can. But paper is also really good, and this is on Mapboard. So just to review, That's alt photo. It's May 25th through July 1st this summer. And if you need an authorization, here's my email down at the bottom here. Just shoot me an email and I'd be happy to answer any questions or to get you authorized to take the class. Thank you for your time.